The movie begins when we see a security guard desperately trying to remove the protective grate that provides access to the pipes of a pizzeria. Apparently, something quite large is approaching from behind him. When the guard finally manages to get to the other side, he's in a storage room and rushes to the emergency exit, but is soon caught by an evil animatronic. He wakes up sitting in a chair with his arms restrained and a mask equipped with razor-sharp blades approaching his face. He still tries to remove the screws from the chair, but unfortunately, he is reached by the blades before he can free himself. A few days later, we meet Mike Schmidt. He has trouble sleeping due to a childhood trauma, as when Mike was younger, he was tasked with watching over his younger brother, Garrett. However, the boy was kidnapped by an unknown figure in a car. Mike has never forgiven himself, and to this day tries to uncover the identity of the kidnapper. He undergoes a type of sleep therapy to try to fall asleep and remember the details of the day his brother disappeared, and in his dreams, Mike alternates between his child self and his adult self. One day, while working as a shopping mall security guard, he sees a boy being pulled by a man and believes it's a kidnapping. This triggers Mike, who charges at the man, delivering several punches to his face, only to discover too late that the man he assaulted was actually the boy's father. Due to this incident, Mike is called in by the supervisor, Steve Raglan, to be fired. However, when Steve sees Mike's last name, he has a change of heart and offers him a job as a night watchman at Fred's Fazbear Pizza, the famous 1980s restaurant that closed its doors after 5 children mysteriously disappeared from the place. His job is to keep watch there until 6 in the morning. To achieve this goal, Mike will have access to various cameras inside and outside the pizzeria. Mike initially declines the job offer, stating that he cannot work overnight because he has a younger sister, Abby Schmidt. The girl doesn't seem to like interacting much with Mike and prefers to focus on her drawings. To make matters worse for Mike, their aunt is seeking custody of Abby because the government pays a good amount to whoever becomes the girl's guardian. Abby's teacher advises Mike to find a job as soon as possible, as this will earn him points to retain custody of his sister. The situation forces Mike to accept the security job, and he soon begins guarding the pizzeria. On his first night on the new job, Mike ends up falling asleep, and his dream is different this time as he finds himself surrounded by 5 strange children staring at him. As he tries to figure out who they are, the children run away. Mike wakes up and returns home, thanking Max, the babysitter hired to take care of his sister while he's at work. Later, we discover that the babysitter is working for Mike's aunt with the mission to gather evidence against him to use in the custody hearing for Abby. Max's brother comes up with the idea to incriminate Mike by destroying Freddy's pizzeria, which would lead to his dismissal and even possible legal action for negligence. On Mike's second night at his new job, he falls asleep once again. In the same recurring dream where he sees his brother Garrett being kidnapped, he sees the 5 children staring at him once more. Mike feels that they know the identity of the kidnapper, but when he questions them, they run away again. However, this time, Mike manages to catch one of them, who strikes him in the arm with a hook. When he wakes up, he realizes that a police officer is knocking on the pizzeria's door. This is when we meet Vanessa, who helps him with the wound on his arm, which was cut, just like in his dream. She mentions that security guards usually don't last long in this job, and brings up the disappearance of the 5 children, introducing him to the famous animatronics that used to entertain parents and kids who ate pizza there in the past. By the way, they are Foxy, Chica, Bonnie, and Fred, the star of the show. At dawn, Mike goes back home, and at this moment, the plan to sabotage him begins, with Max's brother and his friends invading the place and causing destruction. This ends up irritating and awakening the animatronics, and it doesn't take long for Chica to use her cupcake to attack one of the intruders. Another one of the intruders witnesses this scene and panics, fleeing and hiding in a broom closet where Bonnie was already waiting. The leader of the intruders, watching his partner run on the cameras, decides to go see what's happening, finally realizing that the animatronics have come to life. He locks himself in Mike's office and holds onto the grate leading to the pipes, taking damage from Chica's cupcake. He then notices the door to the office mysteriously opening on its own, yet he decides to go through it. He realizes that the emergency exit locks once again, and this time it's Foxy who appears to dispose of him. Noticing the delay of the 3, Max decides to enter the pizzeria to see what's happening. This is when she hears a voice calling her from inside Freddy. Using a chair, she looks inside Freddy's mouth, which is a terrible idea. The animatronic bites her head, separating it from the rest of her body. Since Max obviously doesn't show up to take care of Abby, Mike is forced to bring his sister to work with him. There, the girl falls asleep quickly, while we see the guard tidying up the mess the place had become. He then goes back to his work with the cameras and once again falls asleep. There, he encounters one of the children and asks the boy if he knows who kidnapped Garrett. The child responds that he might know something, but asks for something in return. Anxious to discover the kidnapper's identity, Mike says he's willing to give anything in exchange for this information. Upon waking up, he realizes that his sister is not in the room and rushes to find her. He discovers her playing with her new friends, the animatronics, who surprisingly do not attack her. Mike is puzzled and decides to take her back home. In Abby's room, he sees that the drawings she made are actually visions of the events happening in the pizzeria. He finally understands that the missing children have possessed the animatronics, and he takes the opportunity to ask Abby if they know who kidnapped their brother. She replies that they never mentioned anything, and the only thing they talked about was a yellow rabbit they are very afraid of. On the fourth night, Mike encounters Vanessa in the pizzeria and is surprised that the police officer doesn't seem at all alarmed by the animatronics since she had occasional conversations with them. She explains to Mike that it wasn't just the spirits of the children that inhabited the robots, but their actual bodies. The person responsible for their disappearance hid each part of their bodies inside the animatronics to mislead the police. Despite the strangeness of the situation, humans and animatronics were getting along well and having fun until Abby touches a guitar and gets an electric shock, fainting shortly afterward. Vanessa explains that the electricity in the place is very unstable because the pizzeria had gone without maintenance for decades. Outside the pizzeria, Vanessa is furious with Mike, telling him never to bring Abby there again, as besides the risk of a more severe shock, they never know when the animatronics will be in a good mood. This leaves Mike thinking, and he decides to return to the pizzeria in the middle of the day to try to communicate with the children again. This time, he finds himself in the woods on the day his brother disappeared, with his family inviting him to join them for a meal. Mike tells the children that things didn't happen that way in the past, but the leader of the children responds that if he wants it, that's how every night will be when Mike sleeps at the pizzeria. However, there's a condition. The security guard will have to give Abby to them. Despite being tempted to relive that moment with his family more often, Mike remembers his sister and decides to refuse the deal. Enraged with him, the children begin to attack him even within his dream. Upon waking up, Mike finds himself severely injured from the blows he received in his dream. Moreover, in real life, he was captured by the animatronics and placed in the same trap we saw at the beginning of the film. However, Mike is quicker and manages to remove the screws, escaping from there. But being heavily injured, he can't get far and soon passes out. When he wakes up, he realizes that Vanessa has helped him. She explains that Freddy and his friends want to make Abby one of them, sacrificing her so she can take possession of one of the robots. However, the police officer says they are being forced to do this by the same man who captured them in the 1980s. And they don't remember what the maniac did to them, a man named William Afton, Vanessa's own father. In addition to discovering that Vanessa's father is the yellow rabbit, Mike also notices in a childhood photo of the police officer carrying a toy airplane, the same one Garrett had in his hands when he was kidnapped. In other words, William Afton is not only the one who disappeared with the 5 children in the pizzeria, but also the kidnapper of Mike's younger brother. Vanessa tells him that the only way to immobilize the animatronics is through electricity, handing him a shock pistol and a restraining baton. Meanwhile, we see that Abby was under the care of her aunt, who believes she will finally gain custody of her. While she relaxed in the living room, we see another animatronic arriving at the house. In this case, it's Golden Freddy, the animatronic controlled by the blonde boy who appeared in Mike's dreams. Abby sees her aunt lying on the living room floor, but the boy says she's just sleeping. The two then take a taxi and go to the pizzeria, where Abby realizes too late that to join the animatronic club, she must be sliced by one of the suits. Mike appears and uses a bucket of water to wet the floor, and uses the shock weapon to defeat 2 of the animatronics before going after Abby. Mike manages to rescue his sister, but Chica's cupcake grabs him, preventing him from following his sister. Just as Abby was about to escape the pizzeria, she is stopped by the mysterious yellow rabbit, who tells her she will have to join the others. And finally, we discover that William Afton is the man who arranged the job for Mike at the pizzeria, as he admits that even though he took young Garrett in the 1980s, he also wants to do the same with Mike. Vanessa's goal was to keep him away from the truth until the animatronics caught him. However, the maniac became even more interested in Abby when he found out that Mike had a sister. Vanessa arrives at the scene and tells her father that she won't let this happen. She tries to persuade him to stop, but he ignores her and stabs her before she can react. Abby runs to the pizzeria's mural and sticks her drawings of William hurting the children in the past. As they look at the drawings, the animatronics manage to remember the events that occurred and finally decide to turn against William, crushing him against the gears of their own suits, defeating him. William says he will always come back and puts on the mask one last time before being shut down. At the end of the movie, we see Vanessa in a coma at the hospital. Abby asks Mike if they can ever go back to the pizzeria, and he replies that you never know what the future holds. Now we see a scene in the middle of the credits when we realize that William is returning, as apparently the curse of the suits brings him back to life. In the post-credits scene, we see another animatronic emerging from the pizzeria, Balloon Boy.